have been, yes. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. Yeah, the radio station. Right. They do 1, 2.
Sounds like some terrible programming.
It is. Well, of course, Antonio Brown, Frozen Feed. Oh, yes. I have 5 feet here, and this is UTS. I had a client give me, it is. It's no, it does. I sucked it right out of the river. That's right. I did. That's right. It is so good for your immune system. That's right. Exactly. Right. That's right. If I feel wrong. You should put that in That's right.
It is that time.
Yes, it is. You're right. We can do this.
I'd like to call to order the work session for Monday, August 12th, 5 p.m. Welcome everyone. Phil is not going to be here, so I'll be presiding today. If you're approaching. I don't know, I guess we should move through the agenda. Any comments on the agenda? Or? All right, so I guess the first one is the second quarter marijuana tax allocations. Greg, do you want to speak to that?
Cheryl put this together, so I'll lend her address.
Okay.
Council. In your packets last week, you should have received the spreadsheet with the tax allocations for the second quarter. It's pretty cut and dry. Department heads met about it, discussed it, and this is what we're presenting. Of the amount available for the second quarter, there's $4,000 additional remaining because, you know, if we take the allocations by quarter, the 1.9 million, we should be spending $487,000 a quarter. So what we've come up with, we've added up to $443,000. And then regarding outside funding requests, second quarter $45,000 should be $37,500 per quarter. So we've overexpended by $35,000 for the second quarter. So we're already dipping into the third and fourth quarter, technically. Or sorry, just the third. Are there any questions regarding the allocations or concerns?
Joe, do you have any questions?
Not right now.
Rochelle?
No.
I don't have any at this point.
No, I don't have any. I do. I lied. Landfill wheel loader. What is that? That's in a piece of equipment?
It's a front end loader, so it's got the big steel bucket on the front, big wheels.
Is this the type that has the steel wheels?
No.
No? Okay.
Anthony, anything?
Nothing comes immediately to mind, thank you.
Okay. And high dump mowers, what are those?
For the
For the parks.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
They're still operating with some mowers that are over 25 years old.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing they're still operating.
All right, if there's nothing else, we can move to item 2, which is boards and commissions, marijuana taxes.
We have just a moment, please. I'm sorry. If we could just have a second, please.
So I believe that boards and commissions requested their second portion of the $37,500.
Right.
However, to date, they've only spent $8,300 of the initial $37,500. We can allocate that now. We will be overexpending the second quarter by $31,000 or about $33,000. Or we can wait until third quarter and allocate it at that time.
Is that something that's needed at this point for them to pursue a project, or is that something that's going to be on the back burner?
I can't answer.
I attended their meeting, the board chairs meeting a week ago or so, and they have allocated $67,000 of it, but they haven't spent
How much?
$67,000.
Out of 70,
Out of
75.
Right.
Yeah,
When is it expected that that'll be spent?
I do not know. Like 20 some thousand of it is that sound.
The musical ensemble.
Part of it is, I think, the horse statue.
And then there's $4,500 for a trails building course.
And that's getting dropped.
So what's the question before us now?
Do we want to procure that money now, or wait till it's actually needed in the next quarter?
Well, we won't be overextended if we wait and allocate it when it's needed.
Well, if you look at the musical instruments for Blandina Park's not ready, I don't believe. The horse, we predicated that approval on the approval by CDOT.
And they have tentatively approved it.
They have? Okay. So I didn't know that.
They want us to do an intergovernmental agreement, but they seem okay with it.
Okay. Do we have it in writing?
And an email.
Oh, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And that one was how much, do you know?
It's like 17 or 13.
What
The
the?
sports sculpture.
It's 98 or 96, 9,681.
Well, I think that includes not only the sculpture, but the pedestal on which it will be mounted.
Right.
Right.
It does not include removing
I don't know.
I don't know. It doesn't.
I didn't think it.
It doesn't? No, it doesn't.
But one way to deal with this is if these issues come up individually, most of them fall within my spending authority. I could just, if they go over the 37, I could just start adding them onto the third quarter.
Okay.
That might be the easiest.
Instead of overspending, I think it's a good idea to wait on that allocation until it comes in. That's my personal
Yeah, I agree with
opinion.
you. I agree.
And then it helps with you keep your books on the up and up.
Right.
If it's not being called on right now.
Right.
If they needed it right now, I would not allocate. But
Right.
well, if that's all right with you, Greg.
Yeah. Is that the guidance you need?
Yeah.
Cool. All is good then in the world of finances?
So far.
So far, all
How can that
right.
be? All right, item number 3, outside,
Wait.
well, no, we did item number 3. Outside agency funding? Did we do that?
No.
No, we did
okay.
work with commission.
Second one.
Yeah, we did the boards and commissions.
Yes.
So who wants to take number 3?
Outside agency.
Well, that was
funding.
kind of talked about too, because that's all rolled into this. That's in the second.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Right.
as Cheryl said, we've spent into the third quarter already.
Right.
But that was one way
That
to
was
fund
because
this and
it's
keep it in the
right.
category it's supposed to be charged.
All right, so number 4, tourism, moving right along.
Yes.
We met last week with the tourism board about the welcome center. Also, we got into discussions about the lodging tax and whether it should be collected on the short-term rentals like Airbnb and VRBO, and I think there's several of them out there. Our lodging tax, I think it has enough definition in there to require that short-term rentals pay it. It literally says anything short of living in your car, I think, was the description of it would be chargeable for this tax.
So how would we administer that? I mean, it can't be hard. I mean,
No,
it's on
I
the
think you
website.
notify each one of the businesses that they're responsible for collecting and paying lodging tax, just like they're responsible for the sales tax. They're not getting away without that.
Right.
Have you done any estimation of how much money that might bring in?
I think there's been some rough estimates out there. I think cited some.
Will you come up, please? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I actually had a comment today, so I'm not the best stance here, but I will come up here and do the best that I can. So, actually, let me bring my phone up because I have a few things on it.
But it could be substantial. I think we have the ones advertising on Airbnb. I think somebody said the other day there's 27 of them in town now.
Yeah, I thought it was only 20.
Are they required to be licensed at all?
We have not been licensing them as businesses, but we should be.
I couldn't agree more with that.
One of the things that was expressed as a concern, though, is there's no mention of these things at all in our zoning code. There is in the proposed zoning code, but not in the current one. And there was some question as to whether we can charge them the lodging tax before we have it in the zoning code. But the very fact they're paying sales taxes, to me, taxes and zoning are separate things.
Yeah, and he's right. So let me write something that I wrote earlier today, okay? Section 7, if I can read this, 44 of the lodging tax shall be collected. Oops. Sorry, Michelle's trying to go. Section 742, lodging tax imposed on transactions of furnishings, rooms or accommodations in Trinidad. Subject to the approval of the eligible Stop. Individuals by whatever name known to a person who, for consideration, uses, possesses, or has the right to use or possess any room in a hotel, apartment, hotel, lodging house, which would be a B&B or Airbnb, motor hotel, this is our law, guest house, guest ranch, trailer coach, mobile home, auto camp, or trailer port and park under any concession, like Greg said, almost everything besides the back seat of a car, permit, right of access, license to use, or other agreement otherwise shall collect that lodging tax. It goes on and on. You can forward the email that I sent because I did some research on this. I wanted to do even more for you guys because I really researched our local law, I researched the state law. I brought this up about every 3 or 4 years, and it's painful now because we're in a position where people believe, city council and the city manager believe that the tourism board should take on the welcome center. And you know what? We believe that too. How can a welcome center and a tourism board not work together as joint? But we need more money. Currently, you guys have given us about $50,000, and it's currently costing us about $68,000, $70,000. Plus, we are putting so much on Marty and so much on the welcome center itself to ordinary have essential so many different reasons. We need probably another $30,000 in.
So how much will this bring in?
About $125,000 minimum.
Good.
Okay, so there were some things I found out. So the 64 Hotel, the Peace Hotel, the right across from the La Quinta Hotel. So it's for sale, and I actually looked at it for purchase in May. I don't know what I would use it for, but I looked at it as another hotel in town. And while I looked at, they are advertising. One of the fun things about them is that they don't pay city tax, city tax, or tourism tax or anything because it's still zoned in the county. And I was appalled at someone who has been a cheerleader and worked really hard for Trinidad to find out the Holiday Inn, that's a half mile up the road, is zoned and pays all their taxes, But a local down the road, closer to the city of Trinidad, doesn't because it's still county zone. So I brought it up to Greg and I brought it up to the mayor. And just that RV park and the hotel rooms, so there's 26 hotel rooms and 28 RV park, adds up somewhere probably between, by my estimates, $50,000 to $80,000 a year, plus all the other RV park areas in the Trinidad area that haven't been zoned. It's an easy $125,000, which is, we're looking for about another $100,000 from the tourism board so that we don't have to come to the city and do this bar with you guys, because I know, people have different things to say about what you guys are doing with the marijuana tax or whatever, but I'm here at the city enough to know all the big projects that you have in front of you. So we want to do the Welcome Center, but I was looking for other monies, and then I looked back onto the law again, and when I get wrapped up when I think about it, and we need those things to be put in line so that the tourism board has enough money so we can take on the Welcome Center and do it lovely and happily and not come to you and say, we need another $100,000. We just need to do what law is enacted and recoup that money.
So how soon can we, does anyone think we shouldn't do it?
No. What I'm wondering is, whenever Tower 64 tied into all city utilities and everything
and
else,
he told me that was a selling point too.
how come there wasn't annexation then? That's what surprises me.
Anytime we extend utilities outside the city limits, we have them sign a commitment that if the city extends the city limits, they won't fight it. So we could do that.
Good. Because that's why when we tied in at Cedar Ridge, that's one of the first things I started is going through the process, because I'm totally tied into city utilities, is getting that property annexed into the city at this point. I feel like that's the right thing to do on Santa Fe Trail.
Thank you so much, Rusty. And as a checkpoint for all of you, that tourism tax is 3%, but our city tax is 4%. So all of you guys have been out about $145,000 a year because that tax has not been collected.
And that's just for that
Just that one little, not all camps, RVs, everything but the backseat of your car.
Wow.
So how soon can we do it?
Fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Good.
It'd probably take at least a month at least, because you have to have 2 meetings, a public hearing.
No, they're saying.
The annexation,
Oh, the annexation.
yeah, that would,
When we can start enforcing
Yeah.
tourism revenue.
Yeah.
I want to visit with Les some more about that, but like he forwarded out a letter for an article from the Pueblo Chief.
Yeah, I really appreciate it too. I read that just right.
They are struggling with the exact same thing, so this is a bigger issue than it looks like.
And it's probably a good time to handle it, but so there's a difference in my opinion. There's a difference in regulating Airbnbs, right? Because we're all having that issues all over America, right? Because it didn't happen before, and now there's all these sites, and you can go to VRBO. And at any one point, when I'm looking at my rate structure, and we look at all the hotels in town, there's also another 22 to 27 establishments in Trinidad that equate to 22 to 40 room nights in Trinidad that equals to an additional $40,000 for the tourism tax and $50,000 for the city. So I think so there's two problems. One of them is you need to regulate those. The second part is that it's already law. Even if they haven't been regulated, they should be taking that money because that's what law is and turning it into the city.
I, by the way, have my own opinions on whether you should be able to rent a room out in the residential neighborhood 30 days.
Right, which is a whole different other
That's a whole
subject.
other thing. I hope we're going to address that at some point.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're totally right, Michelle. That is a whole different other thing. A whole different other law. But in law, in effect, that was passed already. All those places should be turning in tax for tourism, and if they're in city limits, for city tax too.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Is that Tower 64 contiguous with existing?
I believe it is.
I think we annexed the road.
We annexed the road?
I think that's how we annexed the lot.
I think that's right.
Did we not recently annex a trailer park to Cedar Ridge? What is that trailer park?
Yeah, the Cedar Ridge, that's what I'm working on now, because I thought we we're connected with Legacy, which is city limits. Turns out there's a piece of property in between. We've got to,
And then there's the two churches.
right, but all that's county, both sides of me. So now I'm having to go off Santa Fe Trail as my
Contiguous none.
yes, and they go half the park, then the second half. But I think city limits should run all the way out to exit 11.
Instead of just the road.
No, that's right. City limits should go out. There shouldn't be, I mean, that's one of our, when we rezoned and rewrote the comprehensive plan, that's one of our key growth areas along there, along the interstate and up Santa Fe Trail. There's no reason that should be part of city limits.
And I don't know if it's like classically, if you would consider that a flagpole annexation kind of, you know, to connect what we were to what we got and what we had when Walmart came in and things like that. We did those annexations. My best guess is we probably have the contiguity to do that. But we could certainly look at that and figure out what we could do. I would just be amazed though, and I'm sorry, I just want to get back to an earlier point, that Airbnbs, however many nights they average per year, I don't think they average like anywhere near full occupancy. So let's say 24 Airbnbs existing in the city and however many rooms that constitutes, plus the mobile home park in the area we were talking about, Hotel 64, that would amount to over $100,000 in tax revenue a year. I don't mean to, question figures. I just can't imagine that it would add up to that much.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm currently reviewing that paperwork for purchasing it because I think it's a great deal. And the tax that I think is around $50,000, $60,000 just from that RV park and that.
Yeah.
So the occupancy of the city of Trinidad, so everybody knows right now, and the hotels that are reporting, which is the Holiday Inn, the Quality Inn, the Days Inn, Super 8, and myself, is 93% year round. And I think that the RV parks and those are around 70% per year.
In any event.
And there's also the hotel just past Tequila's.
Right.
That's out of the city limits.
Yes.
Right, that's in the county. But we would need a legal requirement, sorry, Councilor Bonanno, but a legal requirement that people who are running an Airbnb have to license their business. They have to, they have to have a legal requirement to do that rather than operating under the radar and just kind of declaring themselves as having an Airbnb. That's, well, right, and I don't know if we accomplish that by baking it into the zoning code cake, or how we do that. There has to be a legal requirement that they have a business license and that they be regulated and declare themselves a business.
How did we,
Yeah, go ahead.
how did we surpass that when we annexed that Shell station and everything over there? Was that in the plans, that Tower 64 to go with that at that time when we annexed that?
My guess is that people probably thought that wasn't going to be a huge moneymaker. So we might have just kind of bypassed that.
Well, how many years?
I think at the time they just annexed whoever volunteered to be annexed. They didn't push anything.
Remember that? I thought that was all.
You got
Well, I
something
would just
to
like
add?
to add that, I know, I'm just passionate about trying to make sure that we're taken care of, because I'm part of your family. But, they had 26 RV stations at the beginning of this year, and his occupancy was so high that he smalled some spaces up to make 28 spaces, so he could recoup that extra 2 spaces times 30 days a month for 60 spaces, because he was that busy.
Right.
Okay.
And where I'm at 35 a night, they're at 50 to 60 a night for a motel, or for an RV spot. That's what he's getting. $60 a night.
Thanks, Rusty.
$600, $700 a month for an RV space. What he gets.
Times how many spaces?
Yep.
All right, any other comments on this item? No? We're good?
You want us to bring those ordinances back?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's the
Oh,
as soon as possible. All right, number 5, Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, Outdoor Recreation Director. Who wants to lead with that one?
I'll do that. Oh, sorry.
I thought you were going to not do that this time.
I was asked to, so I can, but
Okay,
I don't have to.
No, I thought that was a discussion a couple weeks ago or so.
You're already out.
I could be wrong. Go ahead. Come on.
Okay. Well, I'm prepared to talk to you if you want to hear me.
I'm sure you do.
You don't want me to be long-winded, Karen?
No, I just enjoyed listening.
A man who needs no introduction, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Chrysler.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Les. Okay, so I do want to speak for as concisely as possible, but what the subject is tonight is looking at a recreation director position for our city. And the reason that has come up is that I have looked at other cities of our size that depend on recreation, and they all have someone like this position that we're proposing. But before I go into the details and give you some handouts of some other city job descriptions for their cities, I just want us to be on the same page here, because I guess we first need to agree that we believe in this. And so we as a board, I think you're all familiar with this, the theory of change that each committee worked on. So we did that. We took it very seriously, and we're using this document as a guide for what we do. And our long-term outcome, the thing that we want to see, is very concise and says Trinidad has an active, engaging outdoor culture. That's the overarching thing that we want to see. And if you agree with that, then we have a purpose, and we will continue to do it. If you don't think that that's important, then this is irrelevant. But the second thing, and I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the thing that supports that states there are abundant, diverse, and accessible networks of trails, open spaces, and recreational facilities in Trinidad for citizens, and events that attract tourists. So we see this as a benefit for our citizens primarily, and if that happens, the tourists are going to benefit too, and they're going to come here and spend their money. So, I don't need a consensus from you if you agree, but that's the premise that we're going on, that you believe that this place can be that. When we actually see Trinidad become an outdoor recreation place, you're going to see a need to have a trail from town up to our new, possibly state park at Crazy French Ranch, another trail that goes from downtown to the Trinidad Lake State Park, probably one that connects those two. You're going to have people that are going to be tubing here and coming here to fish, gravel grinding. If you don't know what that is, it's another kind of biking out on our county roads that we've got hundreds of miles of. Mountain biking is going to be one of the huge components. And if you've seen any other town like Pagosa Springs or Salida or Fruta, Palisade, Cortez, all of these towns are filled with mountain bikes in the season, in this usually spring through autumn. So we can be that, and I think we're going to be that, whether we like it or not. It's coming. So we need to be prepared. So that's why I want to share with you today some correspondence I've had with other cities. And can I start with you, Joe, and you can just take one and pass them down. One of that one, and one of this one. So I've contacted a number of cities, including Palisade, Fruta, Salida, Pagosa Springs, Cortez, because they're all cities that are sort of similar in size. They all have recreation as a major component of their economic income. 3 of them are going to get back to me with more information, but these 2 gave me their job descriptions for their recreation directors. And I had long conversations with the director for Fruta and the director for Salida, both very willing to talk to me and excited about what they do. If we hire someone for a position like this, it's going to be imperative that we go over what that job description is. So that's why I'm reaching out to get these job descriptions from other places. primarily, they're gonna be able to bring money into our city by writing grants. So, in Fruta, they just got a multi-million-dollar grant to build a trail from their city out to where their, one of their primary mountain bike areas is. They already have the mountain bike trails out there, but no way to connect their downtown to it. So GoCo just funded this trail. I rode that trail with them on the inaugural ride. There is a lot of money to be had out there in the outdoor world, and we're not getting it. And if we have somebody who works for the city to do this, we can get that money. Joyce Miller was one of our board members, was in Breckenridge for a conference of outdoor recreation for statewide. And across the board, other cities have this position. And for some reason, we just don't, and it's time. So that's why I'm here, and I am happy to accept questions and do more research on this for
Anthony,
you.
do you have any questions?
Not right now. Excuse me, not right now.
Karen?
I agree with you, I think it's time, but our problem up here is where we're gonna get the money from. You have any
Sure,
suggestions?
I mean, it's always money, but I know that
I
someone
know.
who is in that position will also bring us a whole lot more money.
Absolutely.
So, it's not as though I have the answers for that. We're a volunteer committee and an advisory committee, so we see our job is to come to you and say, this is what the need is. We don't necessarily have the answers on how you're going to get the money. So, I'd love to have that answer, but I do see the need.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree completely too. One of my questions for you, did any of these other communities give you a base salary for what they were offering to their people?
Good point.
I can certainly ask that. It's a little, it's like, how much do you get paid?
No, but I mean, you can talk to their city staff and say, like, hey, we're looking into this.
Yeah.
And maybe this is something that we need to guide our staff into
This
finding
is
out.
all, that's available information.
Because, I mean, I agree with you. It's coming whether we like it or not. We're asking for it by taking on Crazy French Ranch, gravel grinders, trails on Old Soper's Trail between Boulevard and the lake, etc. This is one of the pivots that we want to be, so we're not a one-trick pony town.
Right.
Outdoor recreation is another very lucrative economic driver for a lot of Colorado communities. I think we'll just have to put our heads together and see where we can take, because someone's going to lose out when someone gains in this department. My other question for you is this something that will be overstepping Marty in his regard, or will he be subordinate to this individual? How will that work with him? I don't want to
I think
throw him under the bus.
that's a great question, and Marty's on our board. I mean, he's the city liaison, so he's been involved in this conversation from the start, and knows all about it. Full agreement that we need someone like this. His duties are so different, and he's completely overwhelmed and occupied with what he does. So, initially you would like to sort of look at, well, is that another duty you can take on? It's really not.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not overlooking him if that's something that he's willing to say, hey, this is something more than what I want or to do or need to do. We need another professional.
I think that's safe to say without putting words in his mouth, but our board members have been at these meetings, and Rusty's been there.
Well, I've been on the liaison to this board and commission and have the conversation with Marty, that he is in agreement. It's a position that's coming that's needed, and I think it would be more someone that would work in conjunction with him, possibly out of the same location. So he was more than good with the ideal of this position. And I think we're definitely the time's coming for this position.
We have two Martys, Marty Velasquez and Marty Hackett.
Oh, yeah, this is not Hackett, this is Velasquez.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I understood who you were talking about, but it brought me to think when we created Marty Hackett's job, that was funded, it's a pilot program for 2 years, and that was funded from marijuana. And it's because we're going to have a lapse between the time that we get grants and the time that we have to employ these people.
That was all in line with that. What? Never mind.
Joe, do you have any?
You know, I appreciate you being here today and talking about this kind of stuff, but to bring it out to this council, to me, is like putting the cart before the horse, because in another 3-4 months, we'll have another council sitting in this chair.
Right, but we could discuss in the budget.
You could, but I think it's just, you know, like I say, I just think it's kind of early just to bring this up to council right now. But, you know, I'm all favor for trails and stuff like that.
I don't mind coming back and talking to the.
Because you're gonna have 3 new seats there,
Yeah.
or whatever. So, or 2 new seats, but that's the way it's gonna be. But it's a good idea to discuss it now, but I think it'd be better to discuss it when the new council seat in place.
Can I make one more comment?
Yeah.
To your comment, Mr. Minato, I think it would be good at least if we set him up with the financial resources for if the next council wants it in the budget, so that way it's available should the next council choose
That's
to.
what I said, as long as he's bringing it up now, but it's to the point where, you know, if we're, in the future, he's gonna have to come and face it again.
Why do you think a new council member wouldn't want this position filled?
Hey, you know, I'm not here to judge who's gonna vote for or against it, you know. The people have their own differences, you know.
No, I understand.
There's people that's gonna say yeah, or there's people that say no, but the point of view is that, you know, it's kind of early for this discussion to me, because I won't be here, you won't be here, Carlos won't be here, and I don't know about the mayor, but, you know, I think it's a time to approach the council in confidence with council.
I can certainly do that. I kind of disagree, though. I think we're late. I think we should have been talking about this long ago, personally. And so, I think
You've been talking about trails and everything going up Highway 12 and stuff like that, and I haven't heard nothing after that since you were here the last time. So
That's actually
you got
happening.
you're late. You only been here for 2 meetings. I rest my case. Thank you.
Well, Highway 12 is actually happening. That there's a committee. It's CDOT put that together, so they're actually doing a study on that.
Don't tell me you were here all those meetings. That's all I got.
All right.
I think the 3 of us who will remain on council will be a bridge to connect the new members with what we are tentatively deciding now. And I think that it's something that's council or the city responsibility in the capacity that you serve. You're volunteer and you're advisory. You have done your job and done it well. And now it's incumbent on council to think, is this something that we need, as I'm sure you're expecting, and that we move to act on that. And I appreciate all that you've done, and it probably would be a good idea to gather more information. And in your conversations and your correspondence, rather than ask how much he gets paid, ask, and so what are the costs of administering this kind of a project? Because I'm sure there's more than salary.
Yes.
Okay, and
sure.
that might free them up to be a little bit
That's a good point, yeah.
information.
I guess so.
And then that way we can know that and impose on you to do more of our job. find that out for us. Do you understand the point I'm trying to make?
Yeah, I do. I thank you for that. Yeah.
You know, I have to embellish on that.
Of course you do.
Yes, I know.
We can always do it better.
No, not better. Different.
Different, okay.
You know, when I talked to Tim when we had the Starburst Award, and sometimes as council, we don't say thank you enough to these volunteer boards that we have. And I know Parks and Rec they have been working their butt off. They're one of the most active boards. They're all active, I can't say that. But in Mr. Bonato's point, I can't stop doing my job because somebody else is going to be here in 4 months. We've got to continue doing what we think is right, what's good for the progress of this community. And I have no qualms about continuing this on right away. I think it's an excellent idea.
Excellent. Well, thanks.
Yeah, I'll just add my comments. I agree very closely with what Mr. Diego has to say. I think by the time we get this going, it's going to be, we don't want to lose next summer.
No.
That's for damn sure.
Right.
And I just have one really important question. What is Mike the Headless Chicken?
Oh, you never heard of Mike the Headless Chicken?
No.
It was a roadside show back in 1920 1920 or
In
something.
the early 1900s,
They
yeah.
lopped off his head and he stayed alive because they cauterized the vessel and
Oh, you're
they had to intravenously feed it with, and it was like a sideshow
Yeah.
of turkises.
It's like their town thing. They've got a,
Yeah.
a monument to this headless chicken and. Yeah.
It's like interesting here. All right.
Okay, so I'll get some more information and I'll bring that back. I do have, that's Ture's resume, the one from Fruta. He sent me his resume as well. So I'll get some more figures and I do want to just say that it's not just me. There's 7 of us and we all put a lot of time on this and
Yes.
we have Rusty who helps us and Marty Velasquez. So thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 6, marijuana consumption law. Counselor, do you want to take this one?
Absolutely. And let me begin by saying I'm sorry, but I sent you a couple of emails earlier today that had a few Denver Post articles and also a copy of the Code of Regulations or the Code of Ordinances for the City of Denver with respect to their licensing of marijuana consumption clubs and also what I will refer to as tasting rooms. And I want to just use those two terms as I begin because I think it's important to kind of differentiate the two main categories of what this is, and that is in the one instance an area where people will go and purchase marijuana, small amounts of marijuana, for consumption on the premises. And that is what I kind of refer to as a tasting room. And that is just a place where you could go if you allow that and you decide to have that happen. The other one is a consumption club or, just a consumption club. And there are various other terms for that, but a consumption club is like what we had before, what people tried to have, which was an area where you go and you bring your own, but you consume marijuana in a place where it's allowed, but you're not buying it there, you're simply bringing it and consuming it there. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and I think those are the two big categories, and everything you should kind of think of, like what kind of businesses you want to have allow the purchase and consumption of marijuana, and what kind of businesses you want to have where you will allow marijuana to simply be brought in and consumed. And I just want to say too, the whole thing with the area where you bring it in for consumption, you bring your own in, that is an area that is really hard for anyone to make money off of. The tax money, I mean, that is what we talked about before when we were talking about cover charges or what have you for businesses, especially if they had like an industry night. But of course all that was not allowed previously. So to begin the discussion, I would just like you to please think about those two big categories. And again, I think a good beginning point is the kinds of businesses where you will allow that. So just one or two other thoughts, and I would welcome, the thoughts of Audra or Greg or anyone else who wants to comment on this. But that is, if you're going to allow, like one of the classic thoughts was, if you have a retail marijuana store, you want to be able to have people come in and sample your wares. Not saying that should be allowed, not saying you're going to want that. I'm getting one or more bad looks from council members. But that is what a lot of people, I'm sure, would like to do, is to have an area in their facility where they would like to be able to do that, or in close proximity to their facility where that can happen.
I think.
I'll just make a comment. I can't do that in my liquor store.
Right.
So,
And I think we have representatives from the industry here tonight, and I think all of them that I've spoken to all share the same thoughts, that they are in no way in favor of sampling in stores.
Right.
I think they are not in favor.
And that
no one I've talked to has
I
been
don't
in
think they
favor.
want that. That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, they'd be glad to share. I mean, we could ask the opinion of those that did go.
It actually is probably prohibited, that is any kind of consumption on premises, if you're a retail marijuana store. But I would think that they would want a place in close proximity where people could go buy marijuana and consume just whatever they're buying in close proximity.
Do you want to go down the line here? Go ahead, Nick.
I think that it creates a regulation and enforcement nightmare.
Right, it does.
First of all, to what extent do we regulate it and how do we regulate it? It's like, to your point about, going into a liquor store, buying a bottle, sitting there, break it open and drink it. It makes not a hell of a lot of sense, I don't think. And I think that marijuana is a new and interesting developing industry, and it's a moneymaker for everybody who seems to be involved in it, government included. But at the same time, it's morphing into a whole lot more than I think we can legitimately absorb. And I'd be interested to know more, but I think it would be a regulation and enforcement nightmare, either one of them.
Right, you're right.
Karen?
I agree with that portion of what Mr. Matei said, but the reason I grin is not because you said it. As a business owner, I said, who in their right mind would want to give product away? Let somebody have the effect of the product and then walk out with nothing but purchase. I don't know. Does that sound reasonable?
It sounds reasonable, but we allow it as a society to do that in a bar.
Yeah.
You can go into a bar and purchase a bottle if they have bottle service, and you can consume that whole bottle and go home and drive.
Well, yeah.
I mean, your own thought process. Not legally.
You purchased that bottle. They didn't give it to you.
No, and we wouldn't give them cannabis either. We would.
That's what the sampling
is all about.
But you're selling it. It's a new license type.
Called sampling. It's still selling it.
Right.
And then they sample it.
Yep. So you're selling small amounts of marijuana.
Okay.
And it's a license type now. I mean, we don't have it in Trinidad yet, but it's a license type where they are allowed to have, where they sell it in small amounts so you can actually.
So you can decide if you want to buy a bigger.
Carlos,
I guess. Right.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we should have a place where people can consume a product that's legal in our community. We have so many people that come here from out of state. There's only so many hotels that will permit people to stay, that will allow them to consume in a private setting. I think there's a way that we could provide a consumption area where we can have it, monitored by someone, maybe even, I don't know if someone in the industry might be willing to get together with other industry members and say, this is our area where people can go. We have maybe a staff member who checks IDs to make sure people are going in there that are of age. And you can, decorate it with fragrant flowers that kind of dissipate the other scent that people have issues with. It's...
No, sure.
But I mean, I think for us to not allow people to consume a product that are coming from out of state so often and then not have a place to consume it, well, it's just like what Mr. Schultz said. I mean, you can go into a bar and have a beer, have a glass of wine. We don't have any place like that here now. And I know that's a contentious issue for some people, but it is a legal commodity. It does have this nature to imbibe certain people, of course, but for us not to be able to allow people to have a place to consume a product here and keep them here where they'll stay longer as opposed to having to drive out because they don't want to spend money on a hotel room or someplace where they can't consume their product. I just think that that's kind of, I think that's negligent on our part to not allow it when it's now being sanctioned by the state. That's what we were originally waiting on, the state to put down a law because we were afraid to dance in that gray zone because of issues. Now, one thing that might be an issue is finding an insurance company that's going to, back that up. And that's a real issue. And maybe there might be some fledgling smaller company that's like, I will insure you. It'll be a higher policy or whatever, but that to me is something that I think might be a real challenge, is because if you're going to have someplace, some bars have it, there's that chance that you could get overserved, you could become imbibed because of not being tip certified. You probably have to have a program like that where you can monitor people. Now it's going to be tough though when you have edibles because you're not seeing how much they're consuming possibly, but that's always the nature with bars. You may go in there kind of tipsy, look sober, and you may get overserved. That's just something that's out there. And I'm playing devil's advocate with that. But it is still something that we have dealt with in a responsible way. You know, how many bars do we have in town? How many places sell liquor, restaurants, etc.? I think we should have something here because it's a way for us to keep people here safely and still have them spending money.
Rusty, what do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I think we're losing a lot of money on the tourism side of it by not having a place for people to consume and socialize. I think that's important. That's why they have bars at the beginning for everyone could buy your booze and go home and drink, but people didn't want that. Bars come about, people go out and you socially drink. I think marijuana is going to be along the same lines. Mr. Nels, maybe you can answer this. Is this not going to also address public consumption in some form as far as festivals and everything else? The new laws?
That's in the.
It is in the new laws, and I think that's something we need to be looking at also. They have the 420 events and the hash bashes and all kinds of stuff. We need to not only for a social setting, but we need to be looking at making the rules if we're going to allow for events here. And they bring a lot of people in, not much different than the Blues Fest. 5,000 people or whatever come in here and stay for a weekend. Those are the same kind of events, and you're looking for events through the summer, spring, summer, and fall that we need to be on top of. That's another type of event to bring people to this town to stay for a weekend and spend their money.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to.
I was going to say, like the Blues Fest, I know there were a lot of people who were wanting to be able to consume marijuana, and I'm not naive. I know some people were, but I think there's still a legitimate reason for not wanting people to be able to be allowed to consume marijuana whenever they want, wherever they want. Right? I mean, like if you have a kid's event, like say the water parade, you don't want people coming in and smoking marijuana.
Right.
So I would say a general overall policy and ordinance about not having public consumption, I think, is appropriate. However, an exception for events or things like that, absolutely, I think that totally makes sense. And that's kind of a minor point, but I understand that, and it seems silly to not allow it legally on a local level at this point. But anyway,
Joe, what do you think?
No comment.
Yeah, I figured.
I have a comment. I already got in trouble already.
Yeah.
So comment.
Not at all. I'm against it, just flat out against it. I think there's a big difference between having a beer and smoking a joint. You can have a beer and still not be impaired. You take the strength of the marijuana. I mean, it's impossible to not get high right away. So my concern is that we're going to have people out in the public. Well, I think that's true, isn't it?
But I think it also is determined upon your
I mean,
tolerance.
there's no.
There
I
are tolerance
don't think
levels.
there's an amount of marijuana
You're comparing a medicine to an alcohol.
That's not true.
It's medicine.
yeah, right.
It's a medicine.
Well,
No,
okay.
no, hold on. Let me
Sorry.
finish my point. Okay?
Sorry.
My point is that you get high when you smoke marijuana. You don't get high when you drink a beer.
That's wrong. Not necessarily.
Hold on,
Wait a
stop.
minute. Please. Yeah.
Learn a lot.
I'm telling you what my opinion is, okay? And that's all that matters at this point.
Right.
Okay? My opinion is that you don't want people publicly intoxicated. In marijuana, it's harder to restrict your intake than it is with alcohol. Yes, you can go to a bar, and you can have 6 beers in an hour.
Right.
Yeah, and that's bad. All right, but you can also have 1 beer in an hour. You smoke marijuana, you're high. It's just that simple.
And Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I don't know if you want to do this, but I know there are obviously a number of people in the audience. I don't know if you would consider having comment from a few people and letting them say.
Yeah, if anyone would like to come up to the podium, please.
But if I could, I would just say that if they do, and if you permit that, I'm sorry for I didn't mean to interrupt, that they please not interrupt your discussions when you're talking. But
anyway, those are my thoughts. That's my opinion. Would anyone like to come to the podium?
Just quickly, The tourism board has started using the trolley to go back and forth to the major hotels. Rather than encouraging people to consume it and drive or whatever, I'm wondering if we aren't gonna be walking into another trolley or something at some point, where we're providing
Doesn't
more public
Doesn't
transportation.
that stay with the same law with the buses?
No, I'm not saying consuming on the trolley.
Oh, I
I'm
see.
saying using it for transportation.
Transportation to a public setting.
Because we don't want to encourage people to drive.
Right, right.
And any more than you want to encourage them to drive when they're drinking.
Right.
You know, and so put another option out there.
And the truth is, the bar business is in the sewer right now.
Right.
And, you know, for that very reason. I think we had someone here who came for a marijuana license and was incarcerated. And I called it blessed, and they said, wow, did he damage property? I mean, what was it? Was a DUI situation. And Mr. Downs told me the new rule is that if you, on your second DUI, in his prior one was in 1981, mandatory incarceration. I just don't think there's a future in this, and I think we're considering bucking a trend that is not going to stop.
Do members, no one wants to speak?
I would like to know your opinion on what scenario you think would work for consumption clubs, or do you have an opinion?
I do.
If that's all right.
Please,
All right.
yeah, just please come
Madam,
forward.
please come forward.
You know, we have special events in Trinidad all the time, and I remember when the golf course was out of a liquor license for several years, and we had to get a special events license. So, you know, I mean, I disagree with you. I don't think if you drink one beer, you can't get inebriated. I think some people can. But like one member in the group here said, marijuana is considered medicinal for many, many people, and I don't think they abuse it the way that you think that they do. Or that's the opinion I'm getting from you.
No.
But, you know, I think if we're considering this, then I think you can get a special events license only for the places like the Blues. And I think Mr. Sund is right, and I think we ought to provide the transportation for people to go back and
Your
forth.
point
So
is
that
well taken, but most people take the medicine at home. Right? You know, if
people
it's-
drink at home too.
No, I know.
You know,
What I'm saying is the fact
I
is
mean, there's
medicine-
just some things you're not going to
Also
be able to
don't
regulate in
want-
life. I mean, there's at the golf course. Good example. I'm there a lot.
Yeah.
There's a big sign there that says no alcohol and no consumption. And it happens.
Well, I agree.
I mean, you know, I think it's better if you regulate it and you would be able to have transportation back and forth for people that, and I think it should be done for bars too. I mean, I've seen more people leave bars staggering than I've seen people leave events, and we know they do it at the events anyway. So, you know, they do it at home, they do it at the events, because you have vapes, you have the edibles, so people are going to do it anyway. So why not incorporate it, like, you know, Councilman says, you know, it's going to increase our popularity as far as people coming in to spend money. You start putting hampers on that and people won't come here. You know, I know a lot of I'm part of the Airbnb group, and you advertise that you're 420 friendly, and you get people from Oklahoma, Texas, anywhere else, and they're not going to stay at a hotel because they're
I just
not
don't want
420.
people getting in their car.
Well, they get in their car anyway when they're
already
inebriated.
Yeah, they're-
They-
Thank you, ma'am. And that was Linda Lambden for the record. Mr. Schultz, would you like to speak?
I don't.
Come on, you can't just stay in the audience and not speak.
Robert.
My wife's the speaker.
All right. Sir, would you identify yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Brian Dykes. I'm the general manager for Freedom Road Guidance in Trinidad. To back up to a few things that we talked about earlier, the sampling, I for one in the industry am not for that at all at the dispensary level. I see in California market where that has happened, video after video of people stumbling and falling through glass counters, all sorts of liability issues within a dispensary. With the saturation that Trinidad has, and every dispensary allowing small sampling, that would get ridiculous. The point of people consuming and it being equivalent to alcohol, most people who consume cannabis on a regular basis have a pretty high tolerance. Most of my employees can consume a joint, and it doesn't really even faze them. It's similar to people who consume alcohol on a daily basis, and they build up a tolerance. People are already getting in their cars and driving around all the time, consuming cannabis, consuming alcohol. This is a dangerous town to be driving around in because they have nowhere to consume safely and then safely get back to where their destination needs to be, whether it's a hotel, somewhere else, or somewhere just to hang out until they've relaxed enough that they are sober enough to drive. And I think it's inappropriate and dangerous as a community that we don't have anywhere for people to consume, because they do it anyway, and in vast amounts.
How is it dangerous? We don't give them a place to consume.
Because they do it anyway, and then they get in their cars and drive around.
Do it, well, they're going to a place
Sure.
to consume and get in their car.
That at least gives them a place to hang out and spend some time, similar to a bar, where they can sober up before they need to drive. Right now, it's
Okay,
they're coming into our shops.
I'm really trying to learn.
Yeah,
because I think
right
it's
now,
probably
I think
safest to
most
consume in
most
your
industry
house.
agree with you. Right now, they're going into our shops, they're buying product, they're going back out to their cars, and they're sitting on the side of the streets consuming in their cars. So why not give them an opportunity to go somewhere safe where they can be safe, and we can provide them the education and we can monitor them. And similar to a bar, if a bartender overserves, he's responsible for that person driving away and getting that accident. There's court case after court case of bartenders being held liable for that. I see no difference in a consumption club.
But how are you going to pay insurance? I mean, how are you going to make money off a consumption club?
I have my thoughts on that. I don't really want to share it in front of the group.
Okay.
But I certainly do have thoughts on how to make it a profitable business. But yeah, insurance is our issue. I think we insure grows, we insure stores. We already have kind of gotten over that hurdle of being a difficult to insure industry. Somebody out there will insure us.
But it's your suggestion that consumption clubs be allowed, but not tasting rooms or sampling rooms.
Not within the existing dispensaries, and not places.
I understand the distinction. Why?
Because there's so many dispensaries in town. If you allowed sampling in the 25 guys dispensaries in town, and people are just going to jump from shop to shop to shop to shop to shop, it's like going to bar to bar. It's bar hopping, and they're going to end up just wasted. Similar. So if rather than that,
the sampling 25 different dispensaries.
Yeah, it's like going to 25 different bars. You take a shot.
Some 7-year-old kid shows up from Texas, first time in the dispensary, they're going to hit as many as they can until they just fall out.
Well, if you're giving it away for free, but you're not going to go buy
absolutely, they come into every dispensary in town. Even now without sampling, they're coming in there.
They're coming into every.
All right. Well,
So
this isn't cut and dry, but go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can understand a model where if you have a place where you have a license for a sampling area, okay, it's not on the premises of a retail marijuana store, but you have a facility with that license. So people can come in and buy small amounts of marijuana and consume it on the premises. I can understand that model making money and being able to be run like a business. If you have a place where people, and I'm not trying to advocate for or against either one, but a place where people come in with their own marijuana to consume, I'm having a hard time imagining being able to make money so that you can pay rent, pay employees, pay insurance, pay everything, maybe, for a trolley, pay for all that, just from having a consumption kind of premises.
Sure, I think it's possible. Again, I'm not going to share my exact business plans here in front of everybody, but if you want to have a private conversation,
I understand.
Certainly.
I understand.
And really, it's that's on the business. If they're profitable, they stay in business. If they're not, they go out of business.
Okay.
Yeah, that's up to the private sector.
I
really.
agree with you on that. Let the market find itself.
And I've seen the private consumption clubs up in Denver. Some are making it, some have already folded, and that's on their business model.
All right. Well, what do we need to do at this point? What questions do you ask?
Well, okay,
you
I would say
a moratorium.
Well, yes, I recommend a moratorium just until you decide otherwise. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. I have the draft ordinance in here on the moratorium just to make it clear that until allowed, you're not.
It's like opting out. Right?
Exactly, that's absolutely correct. So I do recommend that. I would just say that beyond that, and we heard what you said, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and that you're opposed.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone. I mean, by the time this.
Right, but I mean, you have 4.5 months left. I mean,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, but and I think we know how Councilman Bonato feels. So I don't need to.
I just said a word, did I?
No, I don't. No, okay, sorry. I want to see facts and evidence. So I would say, if you don't mind, if you would go through and say how you feel personally about consumption clubs and/or sampling or tasting rooms.
Can I make a couple of comments, which I'm sure I'm going to regret? This is kind of random. No, seriously. We seem to be more tolerant of persons consuming marijuana and then driving. Part of the educational component to DUI enforcement was designated drivers. So if you want to get high, find somebody else to drive your stoned ass around town. It certainly makes sense, don't you think? In the context of traffic safety, as you pointed out, let's do that. Another thought is, when we were talking about consuming alcohol, to your point, there's a little bit of time in the book, there's no inhale, exhale, and no fire burner when I'm drinking a beer, and nobody else has to enjoy it. Who's standing around me? However, if I was at the Stones concert, and when the lights went out, literally, okay? But the point I'm trying to make is, we all got to enjoy that which those around me were doing. Okay? And my point is, the quick argument was, it's medicinal. I recognize that, and we always hang our hat on. I supported that idea that marijuana is medicinal, and has been for 2,000 years. But so is insulin. But you don't have a place where a whole bunch of diabetics can go shoot insulin. You understand the fallacy of that logic? Well, it's medicinal. No, it's not. You take it because of the effect,
Sure.
to include medicinal value. But for the purposes of socialization, for the purposes of recreation and gathering and telling dirty jokes, you're smoking or imbibing in edibles so you can enjoy the effects and have a good time. Okay, so the medicinal argument kind of pales when you really think why you're doing it. And I think that the whole concept of designated driver, we talked about having another trial, we could expand the services from the COG ride line to incorporate that kind of stuff. It's an opportunity that maybe we need to embrace, but this is the kind of stuff that speaks to my original point about regulation and enforcement. It becomes a nightmare. But it's one of those things that has to be done, I guess. I don't know. And if it looks like I'm talking to you, I am.
Karen, what do you think?
Well, I wasn't on council when the marijuana usage ordinance passed here in Trinidad. But there's a lot of feelings in the community that marijuana has brought a bad segment of society into town, which I don't believe for a minute. But my point is, I'm belaboring the point like Mr. McKay does all the time, but whatever we do, I want to do it the right way so we have no repercussions back from the community. Another thing I think we need to stress is there really a beneficial financial gain to have consumption clubs? Will the consumption clubs increase revenue enough to at least cover the enforcement segment? I doubt, because I'm a block away from all the pot shops on North Commercial Street. And I think what people do, I've seen the traffic down there, they come for a weekend or come for 2 days, they hit all the pot shops up, get everything they need, and they go back home. I can't see, I don't know. I can't say I can't see it, but I don't know what the benefit of a consumption club. We might be treading water backwards instead of forwards. The enforcement issue might be so extreme that it might drain any financial benefit we have. I think in the crux of the thing, I want to do it right. I want to make sure that we do this correctly. And agreement or moratorium until we get this straight.
Mr. Lopez, moratorium or no moratorium?
I'm in favor of a temporary moratorium until
Right.
we can get it situated, because I do want to see us being able to take advantage of the legislation that was passed down by the state representatives. I will counter your part though about money coming in there, where I think that it is tangible, because we're paying out $96,000 for marijuana dollars to the police department for body cameras and tasers. So I think that the effects of what's being sold here, if we have a place for people to go and socialize, recreate, be someplace, and once that effect has gone away, they can either go back and get more.
No, I disagree.
But I'm just making a counter argument to your.
No, I'm
for the
going
money
to counter
side.
your counter.
But I do feel that it's negligible if we don't have a place for people to consume this product. I really do. And if they are sitting in their cars outside of where they get it, and they're getting high in their cars, I would much rather than be someplace else where someone can be monitoring them, like a bartender would do in a bar. A door person does when they allow someone to come in. If they notice that they are imbibed, they say, "I'm sorry, you can't come in here." You can create an environment just like that to make sure that people are going in there where they're, of the right mind, and then they, take the effects, and then they leave after they've sobered up. I think that's something that can be done, and it's not rocket science. It's just time.
No, but to correlate $96,000 for the police department with marijuana is totally not correct. I think
I'm just going off the number we have right here.
I know,
That's just
but I
something
don't
that's
think
tangible.
we need that because of the marijuana business.
But it's coming from marijuana dollars.
It's
is what I'm
coming
trying to make
from,
the
but
argument.
it's not coming because of marijuana business.
No, but it's a direct corollary
Right.
payment
It's a
from the
payment.
dollars that have come from this new
We
industry.
would have had to pay for it anyway.
Of course we would have, but now we're getting it
All
from
right,
somebody else.
let's move on. Rusty, what do you
All
think?
right.
I
I am in favor of a moratorium until we can get the rules. I'd like to see us be ahead of the game this time and making some rules if this is what we want to do before we pass it. Instead of, I think, with the marijuana when it came, I think it was rushed into, all the rules weren't in place, and there was some suffering on the back end trying to take care of some problems with it. So I am in favor of consumption clubs, but not sampling. And when I brought up earlier about having public consumption at events, I don't mean at an event such as the Blues Fest. I mean an event specifically designed for the marijuana industry, not to mix the crowd that we bring in, kids and everyone else, and non-smokers and pot smokers in with that. I'm talking about separate events, and I didn't mean at events that we have. So I wanted to clarify that.
Joe?
I just have one thing. Didn't they have a place like this in Pueblo a couple, 3-4 months ago where they shut one of them down for something where they were smoking in Pueblo, wasn't there?
There was
On the
one in-
news that
There's one or two in Denver. But they've had
maybe I'm thinking of Denver,
No,
but
I think
they closed
there
it
was a
down.
dispensary, what was it, like exit 96, and people were smoking in the dispensary, and that was shut down.
I thought it was one in Pueblo that they closed down.
Yeah, it was a
That is what was
Yeah.
that six.
Right there. Okay. I'm quiet.
All right,
Go ahead.
I've already said my piece. I do suggest a moratorium. And I think this is an example of where the future council should decide this.
I'm sorry, what?
This is an example of where I think the next council should decide this, because it's too meaningful. And, so, people might even wanna run on it,
I'm not sure you got into the kind of detail the mayor did in a list of things to me, but is it okay if I just read some of the stuff he put out?
Yep.
He said he believes if council approves smoking rooms, we should allow only 2 or 3 of them in the city. Possibly chosen a lottery system, that there should be at least 500 feet between them. Adequate filtration systems need to be installed to eliminate any smoke going outside in the smoking rooms. How are first responders to be protected and need to be protected if they enter a smoking room to keep them from inhaling the smoke, which will affect the first responder drug testing. I think a lot of these are things that have been discussed before the law was passed. But that's the kind of detail that you're gonna end up getting into at some point.
Right. You go into a casino in Vegas and you don't smell cigarette smoke that 20,000 people are smoking. Ventilation is available to take care of that
Yeah.
smoke.
What do you think, Mr. Sumner?
About this situation, I can see providing some outlet in order to do this. However, I'm also sensitive to the whole mothers with drunk driving and everything else involving alcohol, and we don't want to encourage people to consume and drive. I agree that that doesn't stop a lot of people because we don't have a public transportation mindset in this country. We have a mindset of, I can always overcome this. And it never works.
To me, it's a
Everybody
little
has
bit of
that
least
attitude.
common denominator way of viewing laws.
So there's a lot of education that still has to happen with this. At the same time, you may consume your opioids by prescription at home, but you're probably high when you're driving around and working and doing all sorts of other things because it is a drug.
But that's the least common denominator, which is one bad act means you can do anything. So since you can't regulate one thing, why bother trying to regulate anything? Anyway, that's my own opinion. But I think we should move on. I think you got the guidance you need from council.
I believe I do. Moratorium, yes.
Well, we can't act, so I think
Right.
Take a vote just to
Right. But I mean, moratorium, yes, and just for
A straw poll
direction.
kind of thing, yeah.
Moratorium, yes, and nothing else until the new council comes in, or,
I think so.
okay?
One thing that could be, out of the room for a minute, but one thing that would be helpful with a moratorium is the state can't issue a license unless the local government issues a license. But if you just make one broad statement, we're not going to consider any licenses, then it just, nobody's walking in the door asking about it every 15 minutes once it becomes legal. And it will be.
Well, we'll have a moratorium, just saying we don't allow that.
Yeah, that's what I mean, that's that communication.
Yeah.
All right, moving on, item 7, Evergreen Resources, request to amend water tap policy.
Well, this isn't as exciting a discussion, I don't think.
Come
on. Good afternoon, council.
Thank you.
Our office, I can't imagine how many times we, over the years, get requests from people wanting to transfer they have a water tap on their property and they tear whatever down or they don't need it anymore and they want to transfer it to someone else. And in a policy that was written from a resolution, previous superintendents and councils have said, in order to transfer taps, you must own 2 properties. My feeling is the reason that happened way back is that people were kind of on the slide black marketing water taps because they were transferring them. Hey, I got a water tap, I'll sell it to you for 10 grand, we'll just tell the city transfer. And that's happened. It happens now on some of our associations. We have no control of that, but this policy was written. I preface that with recently, I believe Mr. Montoya is here, approached Evergreen through the course of their operations, purchased some homes and they had water taps. They tore the homes, the school down, they had some water taps. Jim came and said they want to do a good thing and transfer that tap to an elderly couple upriver there. And I said, well, that's really nice that you could do that, but what if another elderly couple comes along? Are you going to give it to them too? Who picks the elderly couples and how does that work? We have a policy in place that was set by council. I've highlighted some of the things on there. The first one is the applicant must be the owner of both properties at the time of the transfer. If you want to transfer a tap from this property, you have to own the property you're transferring it to. There's water rights acquisition fees, there's planned investment fees that we collect to upgrade our system, to maintain our water plant. So that's one of them. The other one that I highlighted is the existing cap must be live. And then the applicant, I highlighted this, the applicant has to fill out a extraterritorial water tap request. And I think this is all laid out in the memo. I didn't recopy the memo for you. That was given to you on May 3rd by the city manager. So Evergreen still wants to transfer this tap to the salaried couple, and I'll let Jim speak to that if he wants to. But if we open this door of letting them transfer a tap that doesn't follow the policy, I think we need to amend the policy. If you're going to allow transfers of taps for Evergreen, then you have to allow it for everybody. And I, as the water superintendent, don't feel that's a good idea, not at all. There'll be people, again, black marketing water taps, selling water taps. Hey, I'll get the city to transfer this tap, you give me 10 grand. City doesn't get the money for upgrading our infrastructure, any of that. So, you know, I'm not politically correct right now. I'm fighting for what I think is right for the water department, for the future of the city. So,
Joe, do you have any questions?
Do I have to start off here?
You want to
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say last.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to see I might get turned off. Excuse me.
I agree with Mr. Valentine. This policy was written for a reason. And it's important that we continue to manage this. And it's significant. A greater point of this is that we get an opportunity to upgrade our system, which is in dire need of continual maintenance, which is like this. I applaud Evergreen for being as benevolent and philanthropic as they are, but at the same time, there are too many more they create more problems in trying to manage this than they do being philanthropic to one or more persons. That's it.
Okay. I don't feel comfortable with setting this precedent as well. I mean, the worries that we had last year when we had the drought, that's way too fresh in my mind. I understand what Evergreen's trying to do, and I do applaud them for doing that. It's got to be a workaround for them to help this couple other than doing this, because the city would put more in jeopardy than anything, and I agree. Yeah.
And I don't mean to interject here.
Yes, you do.
It's nothing I haven't told Mr. Montoya. You know, I've got a policy that I go by, and I think it was set for this reason. And
I guess I have a couple of questions. I didn't know you have that many water taps out there that could be transferred, that are just vacant water taps that aren't being used. That would be my first question.
I don't have to provide a list, but we constantly get requests.
Okay. If you have that many, this is more of a humanitarian thing where I think you got to take it at face value. I just kind of sat in the same predicament where you guys are at, but I think you got to look at it as an individual case, not just an open door where you're going to let everything go through. I think if there's really a need for a humanitarian reason to this point, you would have to consider it, and that's just what I'm saying, to consider it. If you don't, that's your choice. But it's a humanitarian thing that Evergreen makes no profit whatsoever. It's an elderly couple hauling water that's 80 years old. They can't afford a water tap. They've been there over 20 years. And matter of fact, I talked to the gentleman today. They're actually living on a Social Security income, which basically they're struggling to even haul water. So we're just trying to help them. But it's more of a case-by-case scenario. And Pony, I'm on that water line myself. They transfer water taps constantly. And if you want to put some type of fee. You could also add some type of fee to transfer a water tap if you feel you're losing money to backfill buying a water tap. If you say you can create a law that says if I'm going to actually lose money and I feel I'm hurting the water system, if you're going to transfer a fee, you could have a transferring fee and say $1,000 to whatever your transferring fee you would come up with that you want to do or create. It would eliminate what you're talking about as far as somebody coming all the time to transfer. Personally, I don't think there's that many water taps up Highway 12 that can be transferred. In Honey, they have 50 or 60 that I know of that are transferred back and forth all the time at a profit, like you're saying. So that door's already open.
That's and I'll clarify, that's their association at the point of our master meter. That's
you still give them the water taps. I differ a little bit with that because they are city water taps. Yes, you gave them to an association. You should have had rules and regulations when you gave those water taps to those associations that they couldn't do that. They're still doing it. This is a humanitarian thing I think about, and like I say, you can correct it by adding a fee for a transfer if you feel you're hurting your water system.
Mr. Lopez, do you have any thoughts or comments?
I'm really kind of torn on this because I do see what you're trying to say. I do see where Mike is too, though, because
right, and rules and laws and that you guys know sit there.
Let them
they change in time.
Right.
Sure.
I do understand that these policies were put in place before my time was here because you had issues in the past. I know we can't make any decision on this at this meeting. When you do pose the idea about having a fee, that does kind of pique my interest, though, because then that is something that if we wanted to amend our current policy, we could do that. But then how many people are going to actually follow that policy and adhere to paying that fee? That's my only concern, to where when they have to go out of pocket, if they're building a new structure or whatever, they have to just go and buy a meter themselves, versus someone benevolently saying, hey, I've got an extra on my property, I will pay for the transfer fee. I don't know how the logistics will work out for the financing, but
you could also say it has to be to an existing structure. You can only transfer.
Just let's go down the line.
Normally, I'm in favor of following Mike on this one because that is the policy that has been implemented. I don't want to go and start opening Pandora's box on this. I'm sure if the people were sitting right in front of me right now, I'd probably be singing a different tune. I'm glad they're not, because it makes it harder to be objective. But I think I'm going to follow staff on this one. Nothing against these people. My heart bleeds for them, no doubt. Maybe if it is that big of a deal, we could start like a fundraising fee or a challenge to help these folks out. But I still think that we should probably try to stick with the policy.
Rusty?
Is there a moratorium or anything going on water taps right now?
Not now.
Not now.
Once we lifted the restrictions, moratorium stopped.
So there's taps for sale then?
Yes, they can. I made that suggestion that Evergreen could purchase a tap.
That's where I was going. So I follow staff and your recommendation, Mr. Valentine.
Joe?
Here goes the bearer of bad news again. This brings back flashback to the Sunflower Valley that you were talking about, Jim, about down there, about giving out water taps. And I don't know how many water taps we gave out at that time, 48, 50 of them at one time, wasn't it, Mike?
Sunflower Valley has quite a few more. Yeah.
So, and it was my suggestion at that time, if a foundation wasn't built on for that water tap in a year's time, that those water taps would regulate back to the city. And I asked this question 2-3 times, and I got a yes answer, but I don't know for sure those taps came back to the city. So if I look at it this way, I know there's a policy in place. I didn't know about this policy, but if I look at it that way, it's a shame. It's a shame that Evergreen is willing they already paid for the tap and everything else, right?
Not only that, they're not. If I can speak.
Go ahead.
We're actually having, these people are basically landlocked. That's why they can't get a water tap. Evergreen is not only trying to give them a water tap, we got to run a line probably almost a half a mile or a little over a half a mile to get them water. But when you see somebody struggling as hard as they are, sometimes we forget what it would be like to struggle like that and not have water. We're all used to going to the faucet and turning the water on and being able to do that. When you're an elderly couple struggling to haul water, and if you just see, it's hard to, like he says, if they were here, you'd kind of be where I'm at. And that's why I'm trying to do this. And it's a big cost just to get them the water tap there, so, if nothing, maybe we could, there's a way around it too.
All I ought to say is one more comment. Sometimes we gotta think of where we came from. We came from Trinity, and I think we all should work together. And it might open a door, Pandora's box, but we opened a lot of Pandora's box sitting here, and it's not gonna matter. And to me, you know, I know there's a policy, but
we basically probably went around your policy.
We gotta stop the give and take here. We gotta bring it to a close.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, my only thought is I follow your advice, Mike. You've seen it. You've seen the bad part of this. You've seen you're obviously agonizing about not helping out older people. But I feel strongly enough that I had to follow your advice on this.
Can I make one final comment?
Yes, with one final comment.
One final comment. We could have went around your policy. We could have had them transfer their property to us for $1, and we could have gave it right back to them, and we could have went around your policy. So,
well, if you still want to work with Mike on it, please do.
Yep.
But I have to follow his advice on this one. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is. Now, what's the last item?
Sister Blandina Park.
Sister Blandina Park. And who's Greg? Are you taking the lead on this?
I've been involved in some meetings with Chris Camden's folks, or Trinidad Development Corporation, and they've come up with a lot of ideas for developing this park. We haven't settled yet on whether this should be a private park or one owned by the city. Mr. Chimino has talked about if it becomes owned by the city, he wants us to swap land rather than it being a gift to the city. One of the other things that I expressed to him as a concern is a few weeks ago they floated the idea of actually taking 2 driveways through this area of the park, and I said that doesn't work as being a small pocket park. To take 2 streets basically through it, turn it into more of a entryway for a hotel than a park.
Right.
And we met last Wednesday, and I think there's a way to accomplish what they're trying to do to get to the Schmidt Brewery, which they want to build out as a boutique hotel, coming in from the south by the Bank of the West building and just staying back there rather than coming through this. But I'm curious as to what you think about whether it should be a city-owned park or not, and whether you'd be willing to entertain swapping some land rather than being outright gift.
Land. What land do we have anymore?
There's land, I think we have land that's to the east of the Marty Feeds building, between there and the Toyota property.
So is that the ideal one to give you the property he was talking about swapping?
You never know. Yeah, he talked about, I mentioned what property they're interested in.
I'm all for more city parks. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about swapping at this point, but if something can be worked out, why not?
Well, right now, the property they want is idle. I don't think it's being used for any purpose. It's just in that field.
My only question is there any issue here of mixing religion with state?
I think there was some problems with that to begin with, but it's starting to morph into her historical commitment and contribution to the community rather than her religious input.
Understood.
There's an argument to be
because
made.
she is clearly a historic figure that had a huge impact on this community.
Was there not originally, was there some discussion about it being a public-private type park, where the northwest corner?
Yeah, that was floated out there too.
The northwest corner would be the cities, and all the rest of it would be private. and we would be responsible for building a band shell or something. And now all of a sudden it's not a public-private park, it's a private park, and I want to exchange part of it so that I could use it for my interest, and you can have a public park.
Would you like an executive session on this?
Probably.
Well, I have a question before we do anything else. So is he wanting to swap this land before or after he finishes blending up?
I don't think those kind of details have been worked out.
Okay.
I think we need an executive session.
I concur.
Yeah.
All right, last agenda item, discussion of other possible agenda items. Does anyone, let's go down the line, do we need any other work session?
Well, I'm for one, when I was looking back at this original work session for tonight, we had 4 items. We get here tonight and there's 8. I think we should avoid a little bit stacking up 4 extra items on a work session. I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, just personally. Because if some of the other discussions would have went much longer, some of the stuff that we discussed would have suffered from that. I think we should avoid doing that.
Yeah, and I think we should have some sort of guidance on interaction with the audience during the work session and what are the limits to all of that. Because I guess on both issues, on marijuana and on the water tap thing, maybe things, went a little bit far, I thought. Does anyone else have that feeling? Or?
I think you handled it beautifully.
I agree, but I'm sorry if I didn't anticipate, how to approach that. I didn't really know there would be. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think
because they can get argumentative.
I can be, but you did well with that. But
yes, you did.
With proper structure, the information was presented tonight from the audience, which was helpful.
It was helpful.
To understand this and to block that, I think would be a detriment to what we're trying to do.
No,
so it's a good idea to have the exchange. It's a stronger idea to regulate that exchange. And Mr. Montoya's not here. The parting shot about, we didn't have to do this. That's bold. I take issue with that whole idea. And I'm sorry to say that in his absence.
Another thing that might be an option for people in the public where they can pose their ideas and opinions is to maybe have more public forums where they can come and then we have, say, like a department head that heads that particular forum and then relays that information back to us. Because then it's not just
we should do more of that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I do like the fact that when people of that particular item come up and give, educated information to us, but there's other people who are going to have opinions about it, and their opinion is not less valid. It's just maybe less informed.
Yeah,
but it's still a good opinion to have.
Point when it gets to interruption.
And I think that's where a forum would be a more appropriate venue for people that just have opinions that want to come and vent them or give ideas or suggestions, and it could be a very healthy thing.
Conversations with council. Remember those? We used to meet at.
Well, doesn't the petitions oral or written at the beginning of each council meeting? That's a forum.
But those are also for the special meeting when we're having work sessions. This is where we hash out our thoughts, where people get a chance to hear what our thinking is, because when we get into like the consent agenda, it's just yes or no. Right. And sometimes and that's part of the reason why we put that in there, because those were like the easier things that were handled by staff, which we take good, faith in of their capacity. But yet we have the other public hearings, we have other miscellaneous items, unfinished business, etc. But this is where we get the chance to describe our thought process.
Honestly, we should let Phil, in tone on this subject too. It's pretty much his meetings to run. So. But I like your idea.
Yes, good.
All right, if there are no other items, I guess the work session is adjourned.
Did we answer your discussion on possible agenda topics?
Oh, I thought nobody did.
We still have the remaining schedule for August 26th and October 16th, correct?
Yes, we still have stuff on it now. Let's take a look. Tentative session. So we have infrastructure, marijuana in August, and then we're in October budget and unified development.
Okay.
I thought you handled it very
So,
well.
we're gonna call it?
What's that? Yeah, it is over. We're adjourned.
Last resort.
So